In the winter of 1873, settlers along the Dakota frontier observed a widow starting to build what seemed like the oddest structure they'd encountered. While her neighbors constructed basic cabins or sawed dugouts into the hills, this woman erected a barn right over her current log cabin. The other homesteaders believed she had gone mad. They murmured that sorrow had shattered her reason. Some kindly proposed aiding her in creating a standard building, thinking she lacked knowledge of simple woodworking. But this woman was not misguided. She was addressing a challenge that would claim nearly half her neighbors' lives before the spring thaw. Her name was Margaret Heller, and she had endured one brutal Dakota winter already as a widow raising 3 small children. That initial winter revealed a truth the other settlers hadn't grasped yet. The land offered all necessities for survival, but only if you learned to collaborate with it rather than battle against it. The northern plains in the 1870s were unforgiving. The Homestead Act lured thousands westward with vows of free acreage, but the truth was much grimmer than advertised. Winters struck early and lingered long. Temperatures plunged to 30 or 40 degrees below zero. Snow didn't merely descend, it blasted horizontally in blinding sheets that obliterated the skyline. And the wind was relentless. It seeped through every crack and every barrier, hunting for heat to snatch. Most homesteaders fashioned their homes from timber sourced from creek valleys, valuable wood often transported 10 or 15 miles. These logs formed walls, ceilings, and crucially, fuel. A household could consume 3 or 4 cords of wood over one winter. Depleting firewood wasn't just inconvenient, it spelled doom. Margaret had absorbed this harsh lesson in her debut winter. Her husband had chopped and piled wood prior to his fatal farming mishap that fall. The stack appeared massive in September. By January, it was diminished by half. By March, she resorted to burning furnishings. The kids huddled under all available blankets as Margaret fueled the stove with chair rungs and planks. When warmth returned at last, she surveyed her ravaged cabin and resolved firmly. She vowed never to suffer such cold again. The issue extended beyond wood quantity. It involved what befell the wood amid winter. Snow accumulated 4 or 5 feet deep around each homestead. Meticulously arranged firewood vanished beneath mounds. When fuel was required, excavation was necessary, and upon unearthing a log, it was saturated with thawed snow and frost. Damp wood refuses to ignite properly. It smokes and chokes the cabin with fumes. It squanders vital tinder. Most critically, it chills the stove precisely when maximum warmth is essential. Margaret pondered that spring on the Scandinavian immigrants she knew from the East. They constructed barns linked to their dwellings, occasionally sheltering livestock in the same edifice. The beasts supplied heat, shared partitions conserved resources, and all remained dry beneath a unified roof. But beyond that, she recalled another detail. These farmers stored winter provisions within the barn proper: hay, grains, implements, and indeed firewood. All essentials stayed arid and reachable even in profound snow. Thus, Margaret launched her peculiar building endeavor. She refrained from demolishing her cabin. Rather, she heightened and broadened the walls, forming a bigger enclosure that fully encompassed the original home. The cabin transformed into the core chamber of a barn. She fashioned the barn's exterior using sod blocks, dense slabs of prairie soil bound by robust grass roots. Sod was abundant, cost-free, and exceptionally effective at retaining warmth. She framed a fresh roof spanning everything, angled to divert snow and precipitation from the building. Upon completion, the outcome puzzled her neighbors. Externally, it resembled a sizable sod barn. Internally, however, lay her cabin, safeguarded inside a larger casing. Between the cabin's walls and the barns, she fashioned a passageway roughly 6 feet broad on every side. Here she amassed her firewood, vast quantities of it, all shielded under the barn's cover, utterly safe from snow and moisture. The fellow settlers ridiculed the idea. They claimed she had wasted supplies and effort. They dubbed it Harler's Double House and jested about a female attempting masculine labor. Margaret disregarded the taunts. She devoted the summer and autumn to harvesting wood and packing the area between her cabin and barn walls. By the initial snowfall in late October, she possessed sufficient dry firewood for 2 winters, all within easy reach of her cabin entrance. The winter spanning 1873 to 1874 ranked one of the most severe in the Northern Plains annals. Snow commenced in November and scarcely ceased until March. Freezing conditions persisted below zero for extended periods. Winds formed drifts that engulfed whole cabins. Provision carts failed to penetrate. Families endured isolation for months. Margaret and her offspring remained cozy. Each dawn, she merely opened her cabin door and picked dry logs from the sheltered perimeter around her abode. She avoided shoveling through snow. She avoided thawing iced wood. She never needed to stint on heat. The dual-wall setup generated an insulating buffer that kept the cabin warm even as the stove dimmed overnight. The sod outer walls trapped heat like heavy quilts. Her neighbors endured misery. By January, households along the stream depleted their reachable firewood. Their exterior stacks had been buried under snow. Men braved frostbite to burrow through piles for frozen, ineffective logs. Certain families incinerated their enclosures. Others burned desiccated buffalo dung when discoverable beneath the white blanket. 2 clans mourned lost youngsters to the chill. An old pair succumbed in February. As spring dawned and snow dissolved, the enduring homesteaders visited Margaret's barn cabin. They circled the edifice deliberately, comprehending now what they had derided half a year prior. The design was ingeniously simple. She hadn't merely erected refuge, she had devised a system harmonizing with the brutal surroundings, rather than opposing them. Tolls circulated across the region. In ensuing years, additional settlers adopted Margaret's method. Some replicated full barns atop their cabins as she did. Others appended lean-to additions to cabin sides for secure wood storage. Those with animals erected attached barns, harnessing beastly heat for their homes. Such integrated buildings grew commonplace, ceasing to seem bizarre. The insight Margaret had echoed what indigenous groups in northern climes had known for ages. Thriving in severe cold isn't about clashing with nature forcefully. It's about layering defenses. It's about preserving resources dry and handy. It's about foreseeing in summer the direst winter scenarios. Above all, it's about vigilance. Margaret observed, absorbed, and adjusted. She identified a problem and deliberated on remedies others employed elsewhere. Then she tailored it to her situation. The barn cabin also imparted homesteaders a nuanced yet vital lesson on prairie building. The substantial sod walls, the buffered air pockets, the accounting for wind and snow behaviors, all stemmed from respecting the environment's might. Successful settlers weren't those replicating eastern farmsteads on the plains. They were those who drew wisdom from the terrain and built in kind. Margaret nurtured her children in that barn cabin. She eventually wed again and enlarged the structure further, incorporating real livestock quarters and a proper loft. The edifice endured over 40 decades. By its abandonment in the early 1900s, it had protected 3 generations through some of Dakota's fiercest winters, and during those years, the firewood remained dry. This story endures because it illustrates a truth we frequently overlook about endurance and evolution. The paramount asset isn't strength or even courage, it's the readiness to watch, think, and innovate when conventional methods falter. Margaret might have amassed a larger wood heap and crossed her fingers. She could have conserved more stringently. Instead, she addressed the core dilemma. The wood wasn't reaching the flame effectively, so she ensured it stayed dry and proximate. Pioneer chronicles abound with such narratives, more subdued than conflicts or mineral booms, yet equally significant. Someone spots a hurdle, they contemplate it thoroughly, they forge a fix that appears quirky at the beginning but suits the precise predicament flawlessly. Then that innovation proliferates because survival privileges effective ideas over custom. The barn cabin has faded from use. Modern heating and insulation address the fuel quandary differently, but the ethos persists. When confronting austere settings, heed the pivotal details. Stay dry, stay heated, keep supplies attainable. Build in alliance with the milieu, not in defiance. These teachings preserved lives on the frontier. They remain applicable today in any context where perseverance hinges on foresight, scrutiny, and the humility to glean from the surrounding world.